over the years, I've done a number of editorializing ventures. I was a library clerk and had an editorial column at the University of Pittsburgh's Pitt News in the 80s called The Ritual Descent. I've been published in Cine's Film Quarterly on subjects like JFK, Oliver Stone's movie. Now, what I propose to do in this discussion is editorialize on what maybe explains how we got from the age of Joe McCarthy, and I'll explain what the age of Joe McCarthy was in case you're a youngster, to the age of Donald Trump. Even though the two of them are similar in their demagoguery, Joe McCarthy would have gone for Donald Trump's throat for talking to Putin, Russia. Joe McCarthy was a demagogue who hated Russia and saw communists everywhere. Paranoid. He gave rise to the movement to go into Vietnam, called Kennedy a communist. And his character assassinations created a great deal of fear. Nixon's career arose on the wave of the House Un-American Affairs Committee, which was created to placate Joe McCarthy. Eisenhower's willingness to commit troops to Vietnam in the event that the French fell there, overturning his own desire to keep out of communist rhetoric. I mean, he had the Korean War, was just to shut up Joe McCarthy. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it." Well, the French were allies of the Japanese in World War II and Vietnam. It's important to understand that about the Vietnam conflict, is that those were the Vichy French who were installed as puppet colonialists when Hitler took power, and Paris was never the capital of Germany, but it was a symbolic moment when Hitler posed at the Eiffel Tower. So we know what Trumpy-Toon's fantasies contain in terms of cognitive substances. But how did we get from an era where the conservative right wing was allied with John McCarthy, and then amorphously, as though there's no puzzle, as though there's no trick, as though there's nothing to understand, they suddenly formed an alliance of Trumpy-Toon Putinese. Now, I'm going to answer this theoretically in this editorial comment, but I would like to discuss my own beliefs about what's going on in American journalism. I have from 1968, a cartoon of my grandfather retiring from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch with hundreds of signatures of some of the most illustrious Midwest journalists. It's really a keeper. And I loved my granddad. These men had fascinating careers. They branched out all over. They were Nobel laureates, friends of Nobel laureates, I should say. They were friends of Walt Disney. They were great heroes. And they had nothing against toddling. They even had a word for men who ran around smoking out stories and getting the -30 dash. They were called ink devils. Fiddle-faddled saddlebags. Well, fourth estate has become overly superstitious, and it's been taken over by greedy elements of the business office. Don't talk about that at all. The spirits will hear you, they say. And there's an apparatus in place to see to it. You know, there's a lot of cunning and the diabolical processes whereby we've evolved into this situation with Trumpy-Toon Putinese at our throats. So let's look at some of the relations that existed that were oddball relations between American foreign intelligence in Russia and secret society culture in America. JFK's assassination in Dallas figures prominently. Demoran Child got Oswald the book depository job, and he was a white Russian. White Russians catapulted Hitler into power after they were loyal to the Tsar. They hated the original anti-communists because they were the ones who the communists replaced in Russia. And yet Oswald went to Russia. I think, Russia did a lot, like the song back in the USSR dramatizes the role of the counterculture in putting Americans at each other's throats over the issue of the Vietnam War. But before the counterculture, before Russian intelligence, before the CIA could get that started, they had to start the Vietnam War. They had to get us in hot water, discredited in the eyes of the human race, so that they could force home this military edict that people should be at each other's throats and every man for himself, choose your team, choose your side. So in this complicated situation, you have people from Russia and the USSR intelligence services who at one point were allied in a non-aggression pact with Adolf Hitler, making compacts beneath the visibility line behind the scenes in American culture with American fascists. George Bush's father, Prescott Bush, this is nobody's imagination, this is real history. He was prosecuted under the Trading with the Enemies Act. He was IG Farben investing. And they were building, Bayer and IG Farben were building the gas chambers. And afterwards, of course, he became very pro-Israeli. So these things are very amorphous, have a texture of cunning. What strategy serves them at any given time is what they will go with. And killing Kennedy served a lot of fascist and imperial Russian purposes, even though Nikita Khrushchev was absolutely outraged and indignant. There were people today in power who, under Yuri Andropov, who rose like Putin, who are destroying the cities that Nikita Khrushchev so proudly built, just as Trumpy-tune is overturning and building on Reagan's horrible legacy of insulting the victims, adding insult to injury when it came to the Kennedy assassination. And you're probably scared of people. Well, the thing is that they're creepy as hell. In Pittsburgh, they have one guy made a movie called Night of the Living Dead, and he's been implicated in the AIDS attack. That's how creepy the Trumpy-tune Putinees are. They scribbled Donahue on the back of my father's obituary, claimed to be the German Green Party, and brought me to a place called Tacit, which has DT and CIA in it, to poison me in the mouth before COVID. I mean, creepy is creepy. You can't get away from how creepy the Trumpy-tune Putinees are. So how did we get from Joe McCarthy to the Trumpy-tune Putinees alliance? How did we get from shrieking anti-communism to people bashing the doors down in Congress to Putin's mutiny for Trumpy-tune? One of the things is its investment in stolen property, imperial property. A lot of art was confiscated in World War II and never found its way back to its proper belongings. A man who writes speeches for Donald Trump attacked me very personally and publicly when I was at the Pitt News, and had a partner who was partner with John Schulman, who was arrested for an $8 million museum heist. Despite this fact, I was arrested for reporting what they were doing in the city of Pittsburgh by the Pitt police in a complete trumped up charge, initial DT, so they could dramatize it. They claimed I put it in the wrong girl. Putin said PU. And this was all for the Beatles, who were lying with Yoko Ono about what really happened to John Lennon, because believe me, I had nothing to do with any of that mess. And I don't even believe that he really died anymore. I think this is his stinking horror show. I think they evacuated him. And the basis of this will never be talked about by anybody. I've been followed by the National Security Council, by the FBI, by the police, by peers who are hostile. I mean, hold your nose, but they had a Sicilian violinist coming at me from Maduro saying they gave you enough clues. That's linguistic anthropology. She dropped that phrase before I found out that there was some encryptions in the letters from Gay, L, Carol, and Burstyn, who they refused to arrest. Okay, so she gave you enough clues, like Donahue and Tacit, DTCIA, enough clues. Clues what? Clues that Trump between Putin is at work and lying through the teeth is what the clues are. Okay, so this is an alliance back in the Axis to Hitler Reagan. His wartime movies with Errol Flynn, who was a Nazi spy, have pro-Axis symbolism in it, like the U.S. over the swastika, and it says, "Oh, rather us," with Reagan sitting right now next to a bust of Hitler and Errol Flynn, which were made by the man who invented the burning cross for the KKK back when they made The Birth of a Nation. They made the same films. Reagan was working with people who invented the burning cross for the KKK. That's authentic Hollywood history. The whole thing is encrypted. The Trump between Putins have been around, inciting ordinary people to be afraid to think it through, because that's the psychology of the arrangement, to be afraid, make people afraid. So that's clear enough. Gave you enough clues. DTCIA, Donahue on my father's obituary. Oh, somebody sure gave me enough clues. But those are clues that these people refuse to see or discuss or say anything about at all. So there's a problem in the ardor that comes out of the boondocks, out of the Mysterian ventures of the Swami Nostra, who are all like this, to the Crow Cagrigus to Corona, by whom I mean Yoko Ono. Not difficulty expressing her name because it violates me, because it gets all this mystique when she's a horror show ripper hatter. She's coming at me because my father was off the coast and he didn't drop the atom bomb. He's not Harry Truman. He felt badly about it. So did I. But I'm a symbol of the survival of American intelligence. So, they're saying, this is a trick of King Edward's freak show. He was the one who went down to Argentina and was friends with Adolf Hitler. And he was the one who worked with Hollywood on the Magic Mountain, Love of Now You See It, Now You Don't, disappearing Veronica Lake scene, and This Gun for Hire, because ultimately the way that we got from John McCarthy to Trump between Putinese is that these people are guns for hire. They may pretend to have an ideological advantage because they want to be shrill, they want to be scary, they want to have domination. But the reason why the Kennedys were snuff filmed by this Hollywood apparatus is because they were insubordinate to it. And that's the key of this. Trump between Putinese wants to get us subordinated. They want sovereignty over the entire thing. So what I suggest we do is what we did with the oligarchs of Russia to the oligarchs of America. Just put a stop to the oligarchs' little chess game and arrest Penis J. Sinfield, who's the primary mover of the intelligence system that has made people so superstitious that they refuse to even watch a video like this one.